concerning the credibility of the senior certificate, of course, that will be provided to those matriculants that pass their final examination. Why is there growing concern there? Is there perhaps a concern in the pass rate, the pass mark specifically?
I think many people express concern about the minimum requirements to pass, which is a 30%. And of course, many would say it's much lower than it was in the past, which is not true. But it's also not easy to make a direct comparison with the past, because in the past we had higher grade, standard grade, lower grade, which we don't have anymore. Secondly, it is important to mention that if you pass, it doesn't mean you would be allowed to study at tertiary institutions. You either need an endorsement for a degree, a baccalaureate endorsement, or for a diploma. Now that endorsement, these endorsements require higher marks and other requirements, but still, universities don't just require that. Within different universities, for different courses, there are different requirements. So the fact that you have an endorsement for a diploma or a degree does not mean you will be allowed into a university. That is very important to notice. Now, coming to the national benchmark tests, these are used in different ways by different universities. Your national benchmark test looks at academic literacy, your readiness to engage with the requirements of academic study. It looks at quantitative literacy, your ability to deal with everyday problems of a quantitative nature, and then also mathematical literacy. So what universities do, some, yes, use it for admission, but some use it for placement. Now, what does that mean? It means you look at the student's results, see if the student is placed in the correct course for him or her, but also maybe to advise at a university such as UJ, you should rather go the diploma route, or you should go the extended degree route. So these are useful tests also to do that.
All right, Prof, let me just interrupt you there for a moment. You mentioned the minimum requirements, of course, to pass and obtain your national certificate, which of course is the 30%, and the minimum requirements that of course you need to be admitted in a tertiary institution of higher learning. Why is there disparity between the two marks? I mean, one would assume that there is communication between institutions of higher learning and basic education, so that when the matriculants write their final exams, they're prepared, knowing what is expected of them in institutions of higher learning.
The important thing is the exam system differentiates. It says to pass, just to have a senior certificate, you need this. However, if you want to go into higher learning, you need more to pass at a higher level. So this is the differentiation that is built into the pass requirements. So we shouldn't equate all of this and just look at the 30%. But important maybe, you know, there has been a huge debate or whether we should focus on the minimum requirements and increase the minimum requirements. And you know, there's a ministerial task team that now looks at the minimum requirements also in terms of the overall pass mark. I would assume this task team will also look at the minimum requirements for diploma and bachelor's degree. Are they at the right level?
And that brings me to my next question, that will we ever see a time where universities stand up and say, we actually do not think these senior certificates are enough, and we need to have a conversation about how these learners need to be trained or taught or even told about how to aim for higher marks, so that they could actually not be disappointed in not being admitted in institutions of higher learning?
Yeah, universities do that already.
Okay.
And we must understand, we hope, that the system in general will improve, but of course, to improve the system in general and the matric results, we need to start already in the foundation phase. We need to start focusing on the early years of schooling, which is now being done. So if you want an improved system and you don't focus on the early years, you will be using plasters all the time. So that is important that we focus on the quality of the whole system in order to get to a stage where we would say the learners that meet the minimum requirements for university are actually ready also for university.
Now, Professor Jonathan Jansen, the Vice-Chancellor of the University of Free State, has been widely quoted as saying that perhaps a 50% minimum pass mark is required for matriculants. Do you agree with him?
50%? On what basis 50%? This is why I think we need to give this ministerial task team that will be looking at the minimum requirements the opportunity to give us a report, to do international benchmarking so that we have an informed way in which we can look at these minimum requirements. And we should then critically interrogate this report and have informed debates of what should be the minimum pass rate.
Now let's head back then, Prof, to the benchmarking test that we spoke about earlier. For those students that have written the tests, how would they then cope? Because you did mention that some of them, of course, for admission reasons, some of them are just for placement reasons with regards to faculty and courses that they select. How are they then coping in universities after this test?
I think also there are two factors here. We must understand that our experience is that those students who pass at a high level with B's and A's and high C's, they do fine at university. They don't struggle at all. Those who struggle are those who just meet the minimum course requirements. Now, what, for instance, we use at UJ, we use these national benchmark tests also to see where are the gaps so that we, during the first year of study, can give the necessary support to these learners. We have, for instance, a first year experience. And in this first year, we really give dedicated attention to the first years to enable them to be successful in future in terms of their studies.
Absolutely. Well, Sarah Gravett, the professor, of course, at University of Johannesburg, the Dean, rather, of the Faculty of Education, thank you so much for joining us.
You're welcome.